So we're at Fry's Bottom and we're talking about tyre pressures today. A lot of people don't realise how important it is about getting the correct tyre pressure for you and the terrain you're riding. So we're just going to run through a few things to help people out. A lot of people seem to think this is acceptable to get the right pressure. That'll do. Every trials rider needs to invest in a decent pump and a low tyre pressure gauge. They're not that expensive and they're all available from us at BVM. So over the years I've found that between 4 and 5 psi works best for me on the rear tyre. We're going to only focus on rear tyre pressures today, not the fronts. One other thing that you need to do is always warm up your bike before you check your tyre pressure, because when your tyre's stone cold, it'll be one particular pressure, but once you get your bike and your tyres up to temperature, it'll actually rise by 1 or 2 psi. So it's always best to double check after every lap what your tyre pressure is. Right, started off with 4 psi, take 1. That was alright. So, isn't there a song about pumping up? Do you think I should like have that music playing every time it's going to be pumping? We're going to be here all day. So 5 psi, same section. Not much different, maybe a bit firmer feel. 1, 2, 3, 4. That feels loads firmer. Oh my god. Jesus. That feels like I've lost a bit of my suspension and the grip's not quite as good. With 6 psi, I can definitely feel the difference with that. Jesus, I can't make it grip. Try that bad boy. 7 psi. God, that feels dead. It just makes you more unbalanced. Let's try that again. Definitely, when I hit that log, it throws me off balance because the tyre isn't like moulding to the log, so it's throwing me left or right. And it definitely feels like I've lost some of my suspension when doing this. I have to put more effort into that. Right. So we've known that, what, 4, 5, 6, 7, just by going 3 psi up, it's made a big difference. So let's go all out. Let's put 15 psi in here, see what that bad boy does, how that makes the bike react. Gotta pump it up. I don't actually know the lyrics to the song. Okay, so we're now at 15 psi, rock solid tyre. Let's see how that goes. Christ. The back end feels heavy and dead. I feel like I've lost half of my suspension with it being that stiff. Even the smallest of roots makes the bike unstable. And I just can't get the drive out of that. Let's go again, see if I can do it better. I need to make sure I'm not as lazy with the bike. Definitely have to put a lot more effort into every little movement. That log is bike height really, so it's a lot of biting in the tyres, the rear tyres doing. No, one more time. Try and get it done. Christ, that was a lot of effort for something that isn't normally that hard to do. Run lower pressures to see how the bike reacts. So we're down to 3 psi, which is a psi lower than I ever go. It doesn't look too bad actually. I definitely feel like I've got my suspension back. Let's see how this goes. Nice. Grips well. I could work with that. Main reason I don't go to 3 is because I'm quite a heavy rider and I do tend to hit stuff hard, so the lower the pressure you go, the more likely you are to have a puncture. But when it's like that actually grips surprisingly well. Maybe I need to rethink my tyre pressures. Whoa, too much grip. Almost crashed. We're going to go super low now. I'm going to try 2 psi. So yeah, that's looking quite flat, especially with the fat ass I've got. See, the thing is as well is I'm a heavier rider than normal for what I'm doing. So for me running this pressure, I'm quite nervous about it to be honest, but let's see how it goes. Christ. My camera girl just screamed, so that put me off, hence why I dabbed. We'll do that again. But over the little routes, it's almost getting the same reaction as I had with the harder tyre pressures, that I can really feel them. So I think my rim is actually hitting the ground on these smaller routes even, so it's actually making it unstable again. Grip's okay though, but it's definitely not as stable running that lower pressure. Let's move on. Hill climb, bit slippery, bit steep. I'm going to start with 4 psi because that is what I would normally run in like a muddy event. Let's see how that goes. I'm going to go second gear. Woo! Ooh. Christ, not as pretty, but still did it. So we're going to go lower on this one. That was 4. Let's try 3 psi, see what a difference that makes. Oh, either I'm getting better or that grip better. We're going to go 2 psi, but that is low as I'm going to go because I don't want to get my tyre off the rim. I really don't like the feeling of the bike with this low tyre. I feel like the rim's touching the ground sometimes and that can throw me off. More likely to get tyre slide as well, so the tyre's going to slip on the rim. Ooh, still gripped alright. Had to work for it though. Professional pumper. 6 psi. Ooh. Definitely spun up a bit more, that's for sure. Right, we're on 15 psi now. It's rock solid. I'm a bit nervous about how this is going to go. 15 psi. I feel like I've lost all my suspension and it's a real harsh ride. Doable, but it really doesn't feel good. It feels terrible. 10 psi. It's harder to balance with this firmer tyre. So we've got a log jump, bank, turn, big bank, and then a bit of a step at the end. Let's see how it goes. Oh, So one thing you definitely need is a decent tyre pressure gauge. We sell these at BVM. They're low pressure ones, so they're very precise in getting the correct pressure that you'll need. And we're going to go down to, we'll go to 6 psi, because I normally run between 4 or 5, so let's see what 6 does. It's quite a hard section actually, so if I f up, it's not necessarily the tyre's fault. Yes, that was better. What a difference tyre pressure makes. Oh. PSI. Even riding up this stream with only 2 PSI, I can feel every little rock in the ground. It's really off-putting. Let's see how it goes up here. Ooh. Ooh. It still does it, but not as good in my opinion. Now, all of our northern viewers will complain about this because they'll say this isn't a rocky section, but we live down south and this is as rocky as it gets, so you have to deal with it. 15 psi, let's see how that goes. Oh, harsh ride. Yeah, the bike just doesn't settle down with the harder pressures. It just really makes it uneven. Oh. Jesus. 10 psi. Let's see how that goes. I think the hardest bit is this polished bit of mud. Oh, that's better. Still a hard ride, but still finding the grip. So we're at 4 psi. Something I would probably, I think I would probably use 4 or 5 on this type of section. Let's see how it goes. PSI, and now I'm really worried about getting a puncture on this now. Gets the grip well, but that is a harsh ride. That went wrong. So between 4 and 5 psi seems to work best for me. I find that between these pressures, the tyre keeps its shape and also seems to grip and work well in all conditions. One thing to note as well is you might want to change your tyre pressures depending on which brand of tyre that you use, as all have slightly softer or firmer compounds, which means the tyres will react differently. Tyre pressures will vary from each person depending on the rider's weight and the terrain they ride, so it really is a personal thing and it's something you're going to have to test and try out for yourself, but this is just a rough guide to try and help you.